in the end, I think the ability for a brand to communicate to their customers right at their storefront, when customers really do want to know and need to know, that's becoming an essential need.
Mm-hmm.
Hello and welcome to the Daktronics Experience Podcast. I'm Justin Oxner here with Matt Anderson. Today we're joined by Jess Bern, Strategic Marketing for Daktronics On-Premise Business Unit. We're going to talk about digital signage on locations and the top 3 ways they help businesses communicate with their audiences. And we're here today with Jess. Jess, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you guys?
We're doing great. I should say I'm doing great. How are you doing over there, Matt?
I'm doing really good today, Justin.
That's good. 6 feet apart in the podcast bunker over here.
Yep.
But we're here today with Jess to talk about some different usage of digital displays. But first, Jess, you're back to the podcast. You've been on once before.
Yep. Second time.
Yep. Can you remind our listeners what you do for Daktronics?
Definitely. So I am in the marketing department at Daktronics, and I support our on-premise business. And that includes any businesses and organizations, really of all sizes and kinds, from convenience stores to churches, as well as the sign companies that we partner with to provide our indoor and outdoor digital signage solutions to those end customers.
Okay. And thinking about, we mentioned you were on before, and we can put a link in the show notes to it, because you were on with Gina Cook, and we had talked about how our businesses using their LED signs during COVID, when the pandemic, I wouldn't say when it was just getting going, but kind of,
Yeah.
And then how we're assisting them with content needs, right?
Yeah, that was early on. It was back in April, and that was when most everything was shut down. You know, I wasn't leaving my house, and I'm sure many other people were in that same situation.
Mm-hmm.
And really since then, a lot of things have happened. We're still dealing with COVID, but economies have reopened since then. And that means that, you know, businesses had to figure out how they were going to reopen their doors to their customers while still mitigating, you know, as much risk as they possibly could for their employees and their customers to keep them safe when they return to their stores.
Right. And even recently, schools are opening, and it feels like things are starting to open and things are getting back to a different type of normal, if we can say it that way. But since establishments have reopened, they've still had to communicate with their customers, and their digital signage is still a big part of that, right?
Definitely. Communication is extremely important right now, and timely communication at that. It really is essential for the success of businesses right now. You know, the 3 of us, we're all in South Dakota, and we never really went through that full shutdown that almost all other states across the U.S. did. But even here, at least for me, it's difficult to know what businesses are actually open today. You know, and if they are open, what hours are they operating, and what does that mean? What does being open mean? You know,
Right.
there's just so many questions surrounding that you think of before you go somewhere now. You know, you think about, what will my experience be if I do decide to go to the store, or should I just keep doing my online ordering and pickup or hit the drive-through?
Right. I was even thinking, like, there's been times where I've Googled to see if the place is even open before I left my house to even go there.
Yep.
Yeah, and you can't always find the answer, actually. You know, you can look something up, and you can't always find on their website or on their social media what's happening. Sometimes you just literally have to do a drive-by to figure it out. So,
Yep. And that makes me think of, I don't know if I'd say it comes in waves, but when this first started, there was a huge unknown. Like we're saying, are you open? If it's like a restaurant, are you doing curbside? Are you doing delivery now and you haven't before? And I feel like it almost got into, you kind of knew then after a while, like at least in Brookings here, we started to know what restaurants were open, which ones weren't. But as things have reopened, it's almost like it's more important now than then, because you have this mixture. We're saying there's some people that are still doing it the way they did earlier, but some are actually opening up their doors. Some are requiring masks, right? Some are taking out tables, social distancing. So it's
patios and things like that.
Yeah. So there's almost like a more of a need now because we had a surge of needing to know, and then we kind of knew, and now it's right back to like, okay, it's really important to communicate with these businesses again.
Yeah, you just still don't really know what can I expect when I go somewhere. Do you need a mask to enter or don't you?
Mm-hmm.
And now on top of all this, there's the coin shortage. And so then how do you even pay if you're going to go somewhere? So that's another question that you add to the mix. And all of these questions are surrounding this experience that 6 months ago we just took for granted. It was just easy to go to a store and grab something. No big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Now there's, a handful of questions that you're wondering about before you leave your house.
Right. And that really kind of leads into the main topic that we're going to cover today about how digital displays integrate with your marketing message. So why during a COVID world would businesses decide to implement digital displays as an advertising medium?
So, there's several reasons why they would, but there are really a few that stand out right now compared to some of the others. And I really have three that I think are the main reasons. Number one is the ability to communicate at your location. The second one is the timeliness and relevance of the content that you're able to put on your sign. And then the third one is the ability to communicate how you are being a positive impact in your community.
Okay. That's a good three. I like when things are grouped in, I guess, threes or fives, Justin, not too long for me, but let's talk about maybe each one of those. The first thing you said was the ability to communicate at your location. Can you maybe dive into that a little bit more?
Yes. So your business location is, the physical place where your customers are actually coming to and interacting and transacting with you, right? So as a business owner, when you're starting your business, I'm sure spend a great deal of time deciding what the right location for your business was when you first decided to open your doors.
Mm-hmm.
And, you put a lot of thought into that right location. You think about what the makeup is of the surrounding community. Are there potential customers present and nearby? You think about the visibility of your location to major traffic flows and areas. And then are you going to be visible from that main road where a lot of people are passing each day? Are people going to be able to easily find your business?
Mm-hmm.
So as a business owner, that physical location is extremely valuable to you. And typical small businesses, it's either their first or second highest cost of doing business. It's their rent or lease payment, and then along with payroll. Mm-hmm. So that's why business owners spend so much time deciding on that perfect location. It's key to maintaining their business. And then when it comes to how you market your business, why is that physical location asset overlooked? You need to make that location work for you as hard as you possibly can. You need a visible beacon for your customers to find you on their daily travels. And that's where signs come in. They're very important for that. But on top of that, you also need to use your location to market yourself by telling potential customers what you have to offer and why they should even stop in. And that's where a digital sign is the key way to communicate that and achieve that ability to drive your customers into your door.
I mean, we even talked about, Googling to see if people are open, right? And that's one thing that people just know they have to be searched for on the internet to be able to be found. But yeah, you're bringing up a whole nother point of people need to know that you're there, whether it's not say impromptu, but like, oh, I see they're there, I'm going to go there now and get it. Or just knowing and seeing that name over and over again. So if you need business from them later, you now know where that place is.
Definitely. Yeah. And, the timeliness of what you're saying at your location is extremely important. So that's the second point, timeliness and relevance of your content. That is really what makes your digital signage effective. And it's something that very few other forms of advertising can achieve. So when your customers are on site, that's when they're able to take advantage of what you have to offer. They can take action on that. And because the digital sign is at your location, it can amplify and reinforce everything that you're promoting in your other channels, like what you're putting on your website or what you're posting to social media.
Mm-hmm.
Timeliness is really key in marketing communication. We all know that, being in marketing.
Mm-hmm.
But I do have an example I think is a really good one to help key in on this point. So do either of you remember early on in the COVID shutdown, the content that you were getting from every brand imaginable?
Yeah, there was it was something like wash your hands, make sure stay safe.
Safety messages.
Yeah.
Or like we're all in this together type of stuff.
Yep.
Yes. And do you remember how you got those messages?
Seeing them.
It wasn't even necessarily driving by, but it was even seeing them share pictures of it on social media from my home.
There'd definitely be that from social media. And then every now and then, like you mentioned, we didn't go many places, but every now and then you just had to get out of the house. Yeah. You didn't go anywhere except stay in your car, but you had to drive around.
Go for a drive,
and I'd see something then, but.
Yep. That is definitely true in places that you saw those messages. But what about email? Do you guys remember anything about email?
I feel like it's slowly picked up.
Yeah.
Like the amount of like newsletters and updates that I was getting.
Yeah. So the one thing that I personally remembered and I kind of felt bombarded by was I felt like every brand that had my contact information was sending me a paragraph long message explaining what they were doing to keep employees safe, how they were planning to continue to serve their customers, and that we were all in this together.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I feel like I got 100 of those emails and they were basically the same from every brand.
Yeah, that sounds very familiar.
Okay, good. Because I was thinking I was maybe the only one for a little bit there, but
it's been a couple months. We forget things.
I was like, I remember those being really nice to read, and then by the time you kept getting them, you're like, all right, I get it.
Yeah. Right. You read like one or two maybe, and you're like, oh, that's nice. Yeah. And then you saw a dozen more in your inbox, and just immediately started deleting them. At least that's what I did.
Yep.
Right.
I read one or two, and I just felt so overwhelmed by the amount of content that was coming in that I didn't read it, and I didn't know what one company was doing compared to another in the end as a result. Because when I was getting those emails in that moment, I didn't really care. I wasn't planning to visit their store that day or even the next day or even the following week.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't care what a brand was doing until I cared to venture out to their store.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I wanted to know what they were going to do to keep me safe and what my experience will be. So in the end, I think the ability for a brand to communicate to their customers right at their storefront, when customers really do want to know and need to know, that's becoming an essential need.
Mm-hmm.
You could even share, like they're sharing stuff of whether or not you need to wear a mask to go into that location and things like that now.
Definitely. And you see that on paper that's plastered to their window.
Mm-hmm.
And you see like 3 or 4 or 5 sheets of paper that are on there. One is showing what their new store hours are because they're not operating under normal hours. One's saying you need a mask. Another one's saying you need to maintain distance when you're inside. And maybe there's another one that's still out there saying their store is still closed, but you can order online and you can pick up later. So all of those messages cluttering the window, that could all be shared and be much more visible by putting it on a digital sign along the roadway. And, customers are seeing that. They know what to expect when they want to come into your store.
It's quick and easy to change out, right? Is the other part, because I keep thinking, I can't remember if we talked about this in the last episode you were on, Jess, but thinking back to even when I worked at a Blockbuster and having, I know that's really a long time ago, they didn't have a digital display outside, so it was a lot of the suction cup stick taking off letters, for
one letter at a time.
Yeah, changing messages. And I remember it was a completely different thing doing that in the spring and fall versus when it was like 20 below outside. So there's in this changing environment, being able to just update a digital display is a lot nicer than having to take down and re-put up. And
right.
For sure. And, that comes into the fact that the business owner actually owns that advertising medium. You know, they are in complete control of that sign. They do what they want with it. You can change it any time of day, however often you want to and need to. You know, unlike other marketing channels, you don't have to work with that third party or advertising agency to get your message published. It's just right there at your fingertips. So that is definitely another huge benefit of digital signage.
Yeah, we've been talking about how we see it when we drive by or when we're coming to the store, things like that. And you just mentioned from their perspective, and Matt alluded to it with the different type of sign that he had at Blockbuster. But have you heard from any of the business owners of how they've been using their displays during this time or adjusting now that things are opening up?
Yeah, I have a couple of examples that I think reiterate that idea of you don't have to abandon all of your existing marketing channels, but they're not enough by themselves. Digital signage plays a key role. And one of the customers that we've talked to that really has illustrated that for us is the healthcare system that is local to us. We lended them one of our signs temporarily a couple of months ago, so they could inform the community of the proper procedure for COVID testing. And after we talked to them about, you know, how did that work for you? They told us that once they put the content up on the sign that was, you know, specific to them and their situation, they saw a huge difference in the response or the actions of people. Prior to having that sign out front, they had ads in in the paper, they had posts on social media and on the radio, but still people were still coming into the hospital with symptoms. Once that sign was out front with the message to call before you come, it significantly reduced the number of people who are walking in off the street.
Nice.
So yeah, just a really great testament to the power of communication through digital signage at your location.
Because that was even that point, right? When you're not feeling good, you probably didn't think to check social media or anything. You're just like, oh, I'm not feeling good. I may have a fever. I need to get in and get it looked at. So at least it's one of those, like you're saying, you have to make sure and cover all your bases because you're not sure how someone's going to find out the information.
Yeah, it's like the long tail of communication. There's so many different fragmented ways to get a message out there that you have to try in multiple ways. And like you said, the impact of that digital sign was huge for that healthcare provider.
Definitely. So, and I think another example of, you know, us recognizing that customers are using their digital signage as an essential way to communicate is what we talked about in April, which was the free content that we were providing to our customers. And that free content was several different types of messages. We were trying to put things out there that worked for multiple business types. So it was a mix of things like drive-through is open, masks are required, hand sanitizer is available, things like that. And since we've made that free content library available, we've seen a huge response in terms of usage. We had 17,500 content downloads from that free content site.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And to put it into relation to things that we typically do, you know, the usage of that was many times greater than any other content that we have provided to our customers in the past. So definitely points to the essential need to communicate right now.
And we talked about being able to change that message quickly and easily. The fact that you can create and schedule your own content seems like it would definitely help with that timely messages and changing on a dime if you need to, and say something changed, especially with the reopenings in the past few weeks. Is that something that you're seeing is very, very helpful for those customers as well?
Definitely. You know, businesses have to pivot quickly right now, whether that's changing their hours or changing how customers need to act while they're in their store. You know, the fact of wearing masks, whether that's required or not, that seems to be something that's still changing quite a bit. And then hours still continue to change for people. So being able to just modify that on the fly and share that on your sign is a huge benefit. It seems like pretty basic messaging that people need to do right now, but that's just what we need.
Yep.
Is that basic messaging.
It's important information that everybody needs to know.
I'm even thinking, and it just popped into my head. Quiet, Justin. I know it's we're talking about, not having the displays out there for when you came into healthcare, but it just made me think about even now, right, with schools reopening. I mean, at the time of this podcast right now, recording this, like my son's going to start in a couple of weeks, and they're starting to say, hey, when you drop off kids in the morning or pick them up, there's certain spots at the elementary schools. I got to imagine it's the same at the high school, but I'm having to read up on those. And I know when I get there, that's something that is definitely going to be helpful because you have a lot of traffic coming in and you're trying to direct them all to drop off in certain locations. So that's another area that's really important to communicate with.
Absolutely. Definitely schools will benefit from using their digital signs to help families and their community understand, what status they're operating under. I know for our school, we have different status levels, different color codes for what you can and can't do at the school. So being able to share that type of content on your sign, that would really be helpful to keep the community informed of what's going on. There's just so much need for continued communication, again, through the schools as well. And it's not just them, there's churches as well that are in a similar spot. They've been closed for a while, they're reopening. So what does that look like for them? Are there the kids programs happening or not? What service times have changed? So people know when they can come and how do they interact with people while they're there. It's just across the board, really any organization has that need to communicate and can use digital signage to do that.
Yeah, it sounds like we're hitting that third point of community impact of those signs. It's beyond just communicating specific things for your business, but also other messages that everybody's going to need to know, from schools to churches. Do you have any other examples of that community impact these signs can make?
Yeah, there is a local movie theater company that I wanted to bring up as well. So the situation that they found themselves in was that they had recently installed their outdoor LED sign and opened their doors for business at the end of 2019. So they were just starting to get established, and then the COVID pandemic hit. So that was, a huge struggle for them. And they really had to get creative on how they could continue to establish their new business in their community. And so they, put their heads down and figured out how they could use their digital sign to help do this, and they did several things with it. One of the things that they used it for was to help out their neighboring businesses. They offered their businesses that were right next door the use of their sign. So they could use it to promote the specials that they were running. They were also hurting as a business. So helping those neighboring businesses out by letting them promote their offerings on their sign was just a really nice thing to do.
Yeah.
And then one of the other things that they did was they wanted to help their local schools and students. And so they highlighted their local high school graduates on their sign. And that was an attempt to help make those kids feel special when they couldn't have that traditional graduation ceremony that people are used to having. So they wanted to help them celebrate their achievements by promoting them on their sign.
That's all. That reminds me, we had Nick Schmeichel on a podcast for Sideline Productions, and he did some video displays for some different high schools and small towns. And it kind of makes me think of this, what you're talking about, Jess, is he had said he didn't think that people would be able to afford to rent a video display for their high school graduation in a small town. But what he found out was all the businesses in town all put their money together and they said, we want to create something special for the students. So we want to pay for this to happen. And he said, okay, like sponsors, right? We'll put your logo on the display. And they all said, no, we don't want any sponsorships. We just want to come together as a community and help give something special to these kids. And that's kind of what you're talking about right now, is it's a real opportunity for this, like banding together.
Definitely. And that's an awesome story. businesses are trying to find any way possible to help support their community, which is just really great to see. It does your heart good to hear about things like that. But this movie theater company, they were able to figure out, well, what can I do that actually is going to, directly relate to what I do as a business, which is to show movies. So they were able to partner with Lionsgate and promote movies that people could stream at home for free. And then they paired that with an offering for curbside concessions. Okay. So people could come to their business and pick up those concessions and then take them back home to enjoy with their movie.
That's cool.
Yeah. And then they encouraged the people that were doing that to take a photo of themselves, watching the movie and eating their snacks, and then share it back with them. And then they were putting them into a contest for prizes that they were going to give out later.
Nice.
Yeah. Nice. So
that reminds me of the local movie theater here was selling huge bags of popcorn curbside, and you could buy like a movie passes and stuff too. But they were just trying to say, look, everybody likes movie theater popcorn, so we'll just sell it in bulk, drive by, pick up, don't have to come inside. So that's kind of what it's like. You get that curbside experience, but you can go home and watch your movie.
Yeah. And you remember that, later that, hey, they did this great thing for me. And now when I can go back to the movie theaters, I'm going to go back to their theater and give them some business back. Mm-hmm. So they've really risen to the occasion for, the difficult situation they were in, and got creative on establishing their business in the community and in ways that I'm sure they never expected they were, having to do. In the end, really the ability to communicate that out, again, comes back to having that LED sign at their business. So people knew I can come here and get those concessions and take advantage of this business still. So,
yeah. And I mean, you've covered a lot of different things, especially like how this is impacting the community, back to the importance of location and digital displays, and how you can go through the scheduling and all that different type of content that everybody kind of needs to know right now. Was there anything else you wanted to cover yet today?
I do, the examples that I talked about here, we do have stories out on our blog that you can read about if you want to know more about the theater, or the how schools are using their signs to communicate, or how the local healthcare system used their sign to direct people properly for COVID testing. So I would just encourage anyone that's interested in learning more to go check out our blog and find those articles. So it's blog.daktronics.com, and go to the business and community channel.
All right. I think we're going to try and find some links directly to those blog posts that you mentioned and get those in the show notes, along with some other links about what you've talked about free content and the other interactions that you've had with businesses putting their digital signage to use.
That would be fantastic.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us today, Jess.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate the time.
You bet. Thanks, Jess.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Daktronics Experience Podcast. Please subscribe at your favorite place to listen to podcasts to keep up with our latest episodes.